This episode is sponsored by Volume Boosters.
Welcome back, everybody, to this week's reality check.
Yeah, I should like to note that, I think we need to, I know that it's like, she's got a child sleeping downstairs, and I mean, who really cares about their quality of sleep? But if they wake up, they fuck up our quality of living, so we're worried about that, but we do need to kind of, like, speak up a little bit, because I noticed that our videos are always scanned on the volume, and I actually have to use a volume booster. Anybody that's having trouble with any of our videos, you can get a volume booster app. That's what I've been using. So just
does that work?
It works. It kind of ruins the quality of the sound when at higher volumes, but I mean, I use it for everything really nowadays. It could be my phone has low volume. I don't know, but if it in fact is the case, and just in case there's a problem with the volume. Hey peeps, sorry to interrupt here, but I just wanted to let you know that we do in fact have means by which to boost the volume. I found so many cool goodies to play with for you guys to make all kinds of new videos, and this is a part of playing the channel on my end as well as on yours, wherein you can help me by recommending editing software and anything that can be used on Android. We are getting a laptop to work with too pretty soon, and we kind of have a shabby older laptop that we can play with that can probably run some of the software you guys might recommend. But please do make any recommendations you want about editing videos in whichever way, anything that you happen to think of that could improve our videos. We do have a method to boost the volume though, so hang in there for now. With this one we were unable to do it, but use a volume booster if you need to. Anyways, I use super loud volume booster app on, you get it from the Play Store. So anyways, back to the past. Volume, we need to speak up a little bit.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Welcome back, everybody, to this week's reality check.
Yeah, it is an odd thing, honestly, because I mean, if my phone, if a booster app can heighten the volume of my phone,
why isn't it already? Yeah.
Why the fuck doesn't it's almost like they programmed it for the app, right? Anyways, this is a very special reality check indeed, for so very many different reasons, and I know that I just went about saying to you in my last video that, I say all of the videos are special, and indeed they are all special.
This week, a very special episode of Reality Check.
Same bad time, same bad channel, but this one is exceptionally special in various ways. One, we're going to be introducing some new features, I suppose you could say, for the channel here, or making an example of them, and then I'm going to be following up by explaining precisely what transpired that you will likely have missed, and what it means for the channel going forward. We're going to be adding some pretty awesome kind of interactive features to the process of soul mechanics as it happens, being that we also have new tech in play that allows for us to do editing and just generally make better videos for you from here on out. So I've actually already filmed something to kind of introduce the tech that is obviously that you won't have seen it yet, so it's happening in the future from the past. We'll get to it. It's already in there. It's already happened. But so we're going to be able to make better videos, and for our first kind of celebration video of being able to make better videos, it just also so happens to be our very first requested reality check, which yes, like fucking awesome for us. There's going to be sound effects and shit right there. But as it happens, we've been getting requests for a while. Actually, we have at least a good handful of requests stacked up. I didn't see them. So again, lady, we have it recorded now. You should also check in on our notices from time to time whenever if you might think about it or whatever. If you go on the channel and you see that number in the notice box, just click it and see what's there. It's usually going to be a pileup of other people's videos. We have a lot of subscriptions. We are fans of a lot of different things. but I must have missed it, either that or YouTube didn't bother to notify me, but I do apologize to everybody, particularly this guy who is DarkFlame, and he has his own channel that actually has some stuff on it that I'm going to get around to addressing as well. He posts kind of bits and pieces of, there's different things, but mainly it's video game stuff.
Cool
he posts
name.
himself playing. Yeah,
Pretty cool
DarkFlame.
name.
So
My husband probably watches him on Twitch.
he has his well, he does. I don't know if he's on Twitch. Are you on Twitch?
It's
sir?
just a video game joke.
Okay, but he actually asked us a few questions that we're going to address right here. I was saying sorry, I missed your comment. I missed a bunch of comments apparently that I didn't know they were there.
Whoops.
So
My bad.
you, sir, are honorarily our very first request, and we are going to deliver for you in spectacular fashion. So for DarkFlame, he had asked me, and this is one of my earlier reality check videos that he's commenting on to this atheist dude calls himself Vice Rhino, the Rhinoceros Guy, for anybody who's been around that long, if you remember that.
The Rhinoceros Guy?
Yeah, he's a rhinoceros with a bow tie, and he did a very terribly, which I want to make note of that. You're going to notice that most of the bigger atheist YouTubers, they're cartoons, aren't they? I think that should be saying something to anybody that is actually paying attention.
That's weird.
All of them. They're cartoons. There's a reason they do that.
Pretty cool cartoon channels.
Yes, of course there are. And there are some of the bigger atheist channels who are not cartoons. But for the most part,
I'm also a fan of general cartoons.
Yeah.
Full Metal is pretty sweet. Home movies.
Yeah, for sure.
I like me some cartoons.
Home movies is actually the origin point for some of the bigger things that are going to be happening with the channel going into the future. I'll see if you can spot that one. Hopefully you'll be able to spot that one as it happens. But I did a reality check as regards Rhinoceros Guy and this terribly titled video that he did with this someone who I call Drug Addict Guy, because he had presented himself as being a recovered drug addict. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I don't know. Rhinoceros Guy, he's not that great a channel, and I kind of lost track of him, forgot about him. But I'll jump back into him, and we'll speak to the nature of this particular video at a later point too. We're gonna have to break this video into parts for various reasons, but we'll get to it. Anyways, DarkFlame had commented I'm gonna answer your questions here, Bub.
You want to just do them in order?
Yeah. What is that clicking noise? In the video he's commenting on,
Just annoying
there
shit
is
in your house.
there is a clicking noise. Do you have a ceiling fan? He asks. Yes, that is the ceiling fan. And
maybe some cats.
There's actually there came into play a reason for that to actually be happening. I used it to make an example of something in another video for Rachel, who we're going to get around to soon anyways, and I'm not going to tell you what the example was or what lesson it taught, because, well, you're going to have to go looking for it now, aren't you? If you want to know, watch our fucking videos. And please, press the damn like button, people. Press the like button. Fucking subscribe if you're not subscribed.
Please,
if you're not subscribed, how dare you?
Please, sir.
Subscribe. Press the like button, unless you actually dislike the video, then I'm gonna have to ask for you to go ahead and fucking press the dislike button, because that's what that's there for.
Or just
press one or the other. Press one or the other.
Why not just leave?
But share the videos. We need you guys to be sharing videos, and this is going to be beneficial to you as well. The video that I had made in the future will explain why, but there's an interactive portions to all of this coming into play, some of which you've already been making use of without even knowing it.
Well, the nature of the platform is interactive.
Sort of, but we're gonna make a new kind of channel here. This is gonna be very cool. should it work out. It's experimental, but that's the nature of our presence here on YouTube. Experimental. Anyways.
Next question.
Yes, it's a ceiling fan. He asks, why do you feel a flood is the only reason we find civilizations beneath our feet, referring to civilizations? If the Rhinoceros Guy and the Drug Addict Guy were talking about, any evidence to the effect of there having been a flood, which Rhinoceros Guy actually presents the evidence.
And the Sphinx has, some people think, has evidence of flooding.
It's an odd happenstance because, see, the thing is that a lot of these atheist YouTubers, these atheist activists, New Agers, they'll go ahead and they'll actually present evidence to the effect of there having been biblical instances.
Well, I mean, just because you don't believe in, like, the Bible doesn't mean there can't be floods.
No, but I mean, they will attest to it not being true. In fact, some of them will go so far as to say it's impossible. It couldn't possibly have happened. There never was any biblical flood, even as they present the evidence to the effect of it actually having transpired.
Who was the guy that worked with Graham Hancock that found all that flooding evidence around the Giza Plateau? I think he passed away. Oh my gosh, who was that guy? I can't remember his name.
I don't know. That's your beat.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's not like I don't think it's like a widely accepted theory, but he personally thought that there was evidence of flooding around the Giza Plateau and other areas and other ruins.
So, I mean, I had said that, in defense of the flood circumstance, I said that, well, we're finding, an entire world buried beneath us. So, obviously, there was a flood at some point, and there are various reasons why we know there must have been a flood at some point. And, of course, now he's asking, well, why do you feel a flood is the only reason we find civilizations beneath their feet? Now, I'm going to answer that on two fronts. One, I don't. I mean, it's the most likely reason. Why these civilizations and this burial would be so interspersed, so level.
Actually, the Göbekli Tepe
was
there's evidence that those people
they buried
it themselves,
and that's another likely occurrence that it could have been buried.
But also a great flood that's like the entire fucking planet. Right. Obviously, that's kind of a ridiculous idea.
Sort of, yeah. But there
could have been flooding in different areas at different times.
That comes into play with the second portion of this answer. Firstly, I don't think that the flood is the only reason, but I think it's a likely reason, and I think that, I mean, obviously, we know that there must have been at some point for all kinds of different reasons, most particularly that we've suffered more than one ice age throughout the past. So yes, there would have been a flood. Even something as massive as a worldwide flood could possibly have transpired. But
yeah, I mean, there was glaciers. Obviously, they melted at some point or another,
All right, but the second answer I want to give to that is in the form of a question thrown back at you. Why do you feel the need to ask that question? And I'm going to go ahead and answer that for you. You're essentially you're positing this query kind of as an argument against it. Like, the reason you do that is because you're trying to kind of devalue the consideration of there having been a biblical flood just because you don't want it to be the case, or you want to work against it.
It's kind of annoying when people do this, but I highly doubt, no, you know what, I don't believe at all ever that you were sitting there talking and said, the only reason why we find buried civilizations is because of floods. Like, that's not a definitive statement that you made, obviously.
No, but,
it's extrapolated, and, people do that. Whatever.
Thank you for pointing that out, but obviously I'm going to go ahead and bet that you might have actually thought that to be the case. your brain will have filled in that portion in order to
Yeah,
support your argument.
Implications
that
and
you
whatnot, but
you would have felt it was at least implied, if not stated, that the flood must be the only reason why the civilizations are buried. No, I was saying that we know that there must have been a flood at some point because we find these evidences in play, but it's not. Obviously, that's going to be bending it backwards to suggest that I'm saying that is the only reason they would have been buried. And that's an instance of you're seeing things in reverse, the brain working at a reflective...
Right. You're firm in your stance, and so if somebody says, oh, there was massive flooding, it immediately equals, I believe in the Bible and everything in it is true. You know, I mean,
basically,
those are not...
What's happening here, and this is a serious fucking problem that we need to elucidate here, is that where it comes to these instances, historical, factors as regards the biblical story, we actually go out of our way, as I've stated, with atheists cherry-picking science, just like fanatics cherry-pick the Bible. The atheist community is going to go out of their way to try and disprove actual historical facts because they feel as though it's supporting the Bible. It's not supporting the Bible. The Bible is
the facts
a fictional story.
Yeah.
There's a what you're fighting in the Bible. It's going to be the values presented. It's the cultist aspect. It's the influence of it. It is the cult outset and or outreach. The Bible is just a fucking book, and it does have actual historical accounts and facts.
Yeah, but just like any other book, it's obviously taken from whoever wrote it, multiple people, whatever, their own experiences. So who's to say there wasn't some dude named Jesus walking around? There's guys named Jesus right now.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they're zombies and they died and came back to life. Like, there can be one without the other. It doesn't mean that it's all definitively stated that if you believe in this one thing, all of it comes with it. That's a very blankety type of way to think of things, and that just isn't reasonable or logical.
And see, as I'm trying to get across with this right here as best I can without trailing off too far.
Thank you.
It, in fact, will very likely be that in your world, sir, from your perspective, that it's going to seem that way. It's going to seem as though it must thereby be implied that this is the case because you're seeing it through the biblical perspective. Atheists out there, you are viewing through a pseudo-spiritual filter. You are the ones who are seeing the fantasy world.
Right. It's also just a thing, I think, I guess you could call it a phenomenon, that when people are passionate about a certain subject, that kind of happens mentally.
How do you mean?
I mean, it might not be, this guy, obviously, he's not like an asshole or anything. It's just one of those psychological things that everybody does. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody does this kind of thing, but it's usually because it's a certain subject that you're passionate about or that you're invested in. That makes it all the more... And I really,
strong, I'm gonna hammer this home with the next I'm gonna have to make an atheism video for other people who actually requested that, but just to touch on it briefly, you're gonna it's the same kind of along the lines of the cognitive dissonance factor, wherein you're gonna feel passionately about these things, you're gonna be passionate about these things, and you're going to essentially fight against yourself in a manner of speaking, put yourself down in ways, fighting for this, what you perceive as being justified cause in atheism and what it seems to be representing. But see,
it's limiting, though. Don't limit yourself like that by placing everything in these two categories. You can have two conflicting thoughts in your head at the same time. You can know there's probably been flooding, and also I don't believe in the Bible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can have both of those things
But
in
see,
your head
that's
at
the
same
thing.
time.
They can't. They
No,
don't.
I think people can.
They're in this
once
trap.
they're aware.
At least, I'm not saying you are specifically. I'm saying for the most part, the atheist activists, the New Age atheist activists, we see they're in that trap, and they don't realize that that trap was set by religion. They don't realize that it's intended.
Well, that's another part of the question. Yes.
And that's what, you feel so passionately. You're fighting for this thing, and ultimately it's a response to a cognitive dissonance factor that is programmed, indoctrinated into you by religion. So I'll go over this in the other video. It's too much to talk about here, but okay, so he said that. Then he said, "Glad you don't believe in objective morality." I don't see why you're glad about that. What does that even mean? You're glad I don't believe
I think it
in
might be a sarcastic
objective
kind of
morality?
statement.
I mean, that's...
That objectively there are things that are right and wrong, which is usually not the case. There's gray areas even within the law. Right?
No, I think he's genuinely saying he's glad I don't believe in objective morality. But
That
mean,
sounds kind of sarcastic. I don't know. I can't tell.
I actually do believe in objective morality. That is to say, I have a belief in the standard of it. I would like for it to be the case, and I do believe that on some level there is an understanding of what could be considered at least an objective ethical system. Like, I should like to think that everybody can at least know that maybe, murdering people or raping people is wrong.
Yeah, but if you
some way or
murder somebody in the
another.
name of self-defense, I'm saying it comes along with other, caveats and other circumstances, and so that's what makes
it's
it
all
more
contextual.
subjective.
It's all circumstantial.
Contextual,
it's all subjective.
circumstantial, that means subjective.
But I would like to think that at the bottom line, we do have some sense of what we would like to be right or wrong to some extent, and that's hypothetical in nature, and it speaks to the nature of my own belief system. But I'm not glad I don't believe in objective morality, because that's what makes a lot of this so fucking difficult, isn't it? It'd be nice to have objective morality, but we don't, and that's what makes the game so challenging yet so fun, I suppose. Anyway, he says, why do you think Christianity is trying to get people to hate God? Now, I'm not sure if you're asking, why do I think that? Or why do I think that they're doing that?
It's written. I mean,
and that's a big question that comes with enormous answers that I'm going to have to give in the other video. I will make another video addressing that question specifically in conjunction with the atheist video. But, what God do you believe in, he asks. I don't believe in a God, like I believe in the God, which is just deity itself. Like, the very concept of deity is going to be one of the levels at which we'd approach that question. I believe in the concept of God as a construct. That is to say, that's like a very difficult question to answer for me, because I don't believe, I'm not going to pick out some God that's written about, characterized, and I'm not going to choose a God from some fictitious religion.
I would say that any organized religion is probably going to be X'd out of that category completely when it comes to the way that you and probably have similar thoughts on the subject. But I would say that the closest synonym for me for the word God, I like that you used deity. That's a good one. That's an interesting one. It's basically universe, nature, force, any of those things. It's very kind of nebulous and ethereal kind of thing.
Well, okay, so
that's just my
having
personal
you say
feeling
that
about
actually brings to bear for me a deeper elucidation to precisely what I actually do believe in and how difficult it is to relate. But people along these lines, people on this path, for example, my lovely partner here on this path, she's going to identify God, generally speaking, as being the unity and collective, the collectedness of all of us. Now, me, without actually giving you any clear indication of what I actually do believe in along those lines, because I don't want to share that with people, it's dangerous, but I will say that the God, in my perspective, like, I think of the world as communicating with us. Obviously, I think of synchronicity as being a force in play. I think of influences, influences in play. I think of communication, all of these different facets of it. But in ultimate reality, I think that the God that I believe in is kind of like a mental patient locked in a room, communicating with billions of fractured personalities.
Yeah, that was one that I liked, that I remember we used to talk about a lot when we first met, was the idea that, if you kind of, for a second, just kind of put away the idea of like a Big Bang in a scientific way, before there was anything, there was a thing, an awareness that didn't know anything, because there was no relativity involved.
Mm-hmm.
You can't know what you are unless you know what you're not, and so this thing was lacking in all relativistic knowledge and needed to separate. And that's kind of, it would be like God separating in lots of different pieces just to learn about itself.
Mm-hmm. As stated,
and I always liked that kind of, you picture it's like in space or whatever, and like
but
it's
not.
very,
It's not in space. It's just,
exactly.
It's not,
you know what I mean?
It's nothing
in
to
void.
be related.
It's in void, but without any kind of relativity, there can be no knowledge whatsoever. So you
right.
have to.
There's no definition.
You have to be in relation to something else to define what you are in the first place.
And so essentially, God, as it were, just reflects upon itself. Just in any way whatsoever, it produces some other thing. It produces 1 second, which thereby produces time in and of itself and becomes eternity. And then, so I suppose you could say, if we needed to actually give any kind of a feature, like a characteristic attributed to this God that I'm believing in, you could say it's eternity itself. Eternity is the construct in which we're working. It is, in fact, the underlying construct behind physics, you could say.
I like that.
So, I mean, physics or eternity.
Yeah, that's another thing, is that the religion people, and or lack thereof, and the science people kind of are always butting heads about very ideas that are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually just a matter of semantics.
Yeah, and that's
words.
that's a pretty good way to relate that. Thank you. She's a mastered spotter, just like I taught her to be. But that's a pretty good. Those are 2 primary values that we could bring into play to show that, because they're not actually 2 primary values. Physics and
They're
eternity,
one.
they're the same thing. Time, space, same thing. And I think this is like, it's a matter of people kind of using the terms as though it's like you said, a semantic issue, but people using the terms like...
It's tribalistic.
The deeper problem there is people using the terms just as like a facade, like a prop term, like time, space. Well, we know that time and space are the same thing because Einstein said so in relative, but you don't actually know that. Most people don't actually make any attempt at kind of considering what that means and how it applies.
The whole point of having something like a religion or a science is so that we can try to learn and understand and gather bits and pieces to put the puzzle together. And so both of those things serve the same purpose.
Yeah,
they're created to comfort in the way of giving answers.
Right, and that's the way it appears from our ordinary perspective, but again, we're seeing everything in the rearview mirror. And it is, in fact, actually the production of these differing factors that divide in and of itself what allows for us to construct at all. So it's like time, space you don't really see the applicable consideration of it existing. Time and space is one thing. You completely miss the trick of it, the illusion of it, wherein they are separated. They're not actually divided. They are a function in and of themselves as one entity.
Yeah, isn't that another one of the Einstein laws? Is that when you move through space, you move through time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going through it. At
And
the same
thereby
time,
the
either way,
reverse,
no
you
matter
move
where
through
you're
time,
going.
You move through space,
Right.
which gives us the idea of time travel in and of itself, which is something that we're constantly doing. That's another little series of videos I'm going to start putting out, is speaking to our inherent superpowers. That's a fun one. That's going to point out some more of the just blatant, in-your-face realities that you guys are totally missing, man. But that's one of them, right there, time-space. It is, in fact, not divided. It can't be. There's no... But you don't see that. You think of it as being two things that are together.
But it's so much bigger
They're not.
than any one person's daily life. And when you're in kind of each moment just working towards, one day at a time, like they say in the program, then a concept like time, space, or God is usually so, I don't want to just use the word big because it barely, it's so immense that it's very hard to consider and to keep it in the forefront of your awareness on, just regularly. So,
I kind of think
that's normal.
I believe that's what kind of was intended to be implied where it comes to the Conversations with God material, where it kept suggesting that remembering is what you're doing.
Yeah,
and remember.
absolutely. Remember, but you have to keep remembering over and over and over because you're always going to be
Right.
pulled back into that daily minutia, which is also important. And that daily minutia may sound like it's throwaway bullshit, but it's absolutely not. It's just as important as the immense concepts of, grand ideas, and they're both important. They both serve a purpose.
See,
And you have to just keep remembering. That's the game.
that's kind of what it comes down to, really, is that when you remember some of these simple yet broad-reaching considerations, such as that, the time-space thing, and you remember it consistently enough to get to the point where it's no longer a matter of remembering, that you simply do not forget anymore, it begins to apply to that daily. It applies to everything.
They kind of
Again,
bleed together a little bit.
none of it is divided. There is no division. Every division that you can account for is illusory.
But it takes a lot of work and effort to get, a normal, like, daily, regular Joe kind of person. It takes a lot of effort to get to the point where you can have both of those things at the same time in your awareness. I mean, that's why people meditate for years and years. It affects everything. It affects your, your energy levels and your ideas and the way that you behave and the way that you think about things. And so I think if it were all one way or the other, that's when you get into, we look at somebody and they have schizophrenia, or they can't communicate,
yes,
or they're fucked up in some way.
That's where we're going with this video. It's so funny you should say that. That's precisely the case.
It appears that way because they're kind of they can't find that balance between the immense and the minuscule parts of
yes, and
the world.
You do run that risk too when you did. That's what we're personally, a goal for me with this channel is to try and get you guys successfully through the kind of threshold that I've been through without, safely and effectively, and catching you guys up essentially with, at least the point of development that I am at as regards my own personal evolution, without having to place you through the dangers and the pitfalls, because you do run that risk there are points here in my development wherein I could easily have slipped up to any extent. Just one value could have been off, and I could have wound up fucking psychotic. Just totally, like, people would not get a fucking thing. Like, what I see, the world that I see, you wouldn't understand it at all if I were to go about expressing it to you the way that it presents to me. You'd think I was a lunatic. So I need to, that's what we're working at. That's a part of the play here as regards to channels. A lot of what we have to present, even with the, we were just saying, with the investigations, we're not actually, like, discovering anything. We're just discovering ways to communicate what we already know.
Yeah, in some ways it's harder.
It's very difficult.
It is very difficult.
Obviously, a lot of you guys have been watching the channel for a long time and probably still don't get a lot of what we're saying, or even have the interest to invest so much. It's like,
well, again, it's the nature of the medium. You, for example, had the opportunity to actually be at the fingertips of some extremely special people that were able to boost these experiences and kind of shove you towards these things.
You mean as regards to my training people?
Exactly. And so to try and do that face to face is hard enough, and then trying to do it through a screen or a medium like this is even harder.
Again, the best part is that whether they knew it or not, the people who trained me, for the most part, did it through spot casting. Some of them did know they were doing it, and that's exceptionally impressive. But whatever the case, they laid the groundwork, they sowed the seeds, they planted values, that would eventually cause for transformations to occur, given particular circumstances. So that's what we're doing too, and that's how we've been playing it. That's how I've been playing the initiative the whole time. So it's like spot casting came into play as a result of me taking notice that it was something I had already been doing, just via synchronicity. So whatever the case, however long it takes, anybody who's been watching the channel, anybody who pays attention to any of this is already well on their way. It's going to happen. You will get the gist of it, I guess, in your own time.
Yeah, but even if somebody comes across our, stuff, and it might maybe lead them on to other videos and other things, and it kind of grows and grows, then if you just pick up one thing, then it's worth it. If it's just one thing that it sparks a curiosity to investigate on one's own,
right?
And find greater materials, then what we're doing is absolutely worth it.
Obviously, it's a cool instance in and of itself. It's fun for people. It's something to be doing. It's a purpose to be having.
It's so exciting when you first find it.
Yeah, when you do,
and you first start noticing the synchronicities and start following them on that path of the synchronicities, and different books find you and different people find you and experiences, and even if it's just a passing word or two from a random person on the street, but it has this you're like, what?
Yeah.
What are the fucking chances? It's so exciting. I love that.
When it gets to the point where we're at, most especially where I'm at, where this is happening, it's always happening. It's just, you have no idea, a lot of you out there, and the thing is that most people who aren't experiencing synchronicity likely aren't really giving it a hell of a shot.
Or no, they probably are and just don't realize it sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, also it's a matter of not having an open mind, and we hear that a lot. Is people don't, you don't have an open mind, and people will take that as an insult of sorts, and immediately reject the idea proposed through it, because that's a part. It's not your fault if you don't have an open mind. What that means, what that's intended to relate, is that you have been locked down, that your mind has been locked down by exterior factors.
At least to certain subjects or certain things.
It's not something that you've decided to do necessarily, and it's certainly not something that you cannot change by just changing your mind immediately.
It doesn't speak to it being any kind of fault or...
No, it's a condition.
What's the
It's
word
a condition that you're in.
It's
It's a
not
situation.
it's not anything bad about anybody, because most people do have a very open mind when it comes to certain things, but there's always those few where people really stick their, their flag in the ground and won't budge on a certain subject, or if they're just very passionate, which is also very good. I mean, take your passion and put it somewhere where you're going to benefit from it.
I mean, I guess what I could say is try and place some, consider logic and reason. If we're presenting something that conflicts with something you hold to be true, have your flag stuck in,
and that's fine.
Then tell us that, and either we're wrong, like maybe we should change our minds. If you tell us that something we say disagrees with you, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be establishing these things. That's the purpose of all of this, is the establishment of an absolute situation.
Well,
we need to be in a Alright, so to bring us back here, because we trailed off there, let's finish off these questions and then get to the actual meat and potatoes here, the point of the whole video, really. So...
I feel like we've answered... What's his name? Dark what?
DarkFlame?
DarkFlame, I feel like we've answered all of DarkFlame's questions.
Okay, so his very last question was, so you promote getting out of addiction, yet you called someone who did just that a drug addict. Well, firstly, and he says, was that just an ad hominem? Which, you don't need the an, it would just be ad hominem. And no, it's in support of his stance. You see, it's backwards again. But, sorry, I'm not like making fun of you. I'm just saying that it's something that's going to happen all the time. And be seeing things backwards all the time. The brain is seeing everything in reverse. It's a reflection. So, no, it's not ad hominem. How the fuck do you know he did that? I mean, he could be lying through his fucking teeth. The dude's a Christian. Like a hardcore Christian evangelist. He could be lying through his fucking teeth about all of it. I mean, obviously he's lying about most of it. But, B, he defines himself as being a drug. Now, in like NA or AA or what have you, these people are trained, and again, that's a specific, that's a religious...
It's like a part of a step, yeah.
That's
like
a religious circumstance. These AA or NA meetings, they're cults in and of themselves. They are religious in orientation. So,
the 12 steps originated from a religious set of teachings, specifically from Christianity, but I think there's a little bit of evolution happening nowadays with people that are working through the program and trying to get clean, is that you can kind of pick and choose, and there are options for secular types of recovery programs.
But as regards that these particular programs or what have you, and the religious facet of it, where it comes to NAAA, these are religious organizations.
Yeah, at the core.
And this guy is a religious evangelist, so obviously he is going to have been involved with that program. In fact, I think he actually stated
followed it to the
that's
T,
what
most
led
likely.
him to religion was through AA or NA, getting off of drugs. And it's very clearly stated in any of these organizations that if you are a drug addict, once a drug addict, once an alcoholic, always such.
Yeah.
And there's a very specific reason why they do that. It's part of the indoctrination. So, yeah, in his mind, he's always a drug addict guy, so that's one reason to call him that, but that's not the reason I called him that. I called him that because it was just, that's what he defined himself as being, and honestly, I mean, I could have said recovered drug addict guy if you like it better, but I mean...
It's not meant to be like me or anything.
Right, that's essentially, I called him drug addict guy because he presented himself as a recovered drug addict, so I'm not saying that he...
guy.
Now, obviously, I do not believe that because I've been a drug addict, I've been an alcoholic.
It's like any other thing, red
and
shirt
I am
guy
recovered.
or...
So, no, I'm not going to tell you... Anybody who tells you once something, always something, you're an alcoholic in your past, you're always going to be an alcoholic, don't ever fucking buy into that shit. That's a trap.
I feel like it does help some people though. I've known a lot of people that have gone through the program and have remained clean and have remained a part of the program itself. 20, 30 years later, they're still going to meetings or whatever, and they do refer to themselves as alcoholics, even though the one guy I knew was clean for like 32 years, I think, and he still regarded himself to be an alcoholic.
At some point, it's going to cross over from being supplemental to menacing, in the sense that you're trapping yourself in the role of playing an alcoholic after so long. Like, essentially, you're insinuating that you cannot escape, that you cannot get free no matter how long, and you're always, like, at risk for that. Is not necessarily the case. That's your decision.
Well, I don't know. A lot of those people, like the guy that I'm talking about specifically, was very adamant about the fact that I don't care how long it's been, I can't just sit down and drink one Bud Light.
What?
You know what I mean?
That's precisely what I'm saying, is that
like
maybe
a reminder of what they're accomplishing.
There's a very good chance that that behavior is inherent in his personality because he's telling it to be there. By continuously, repeatedly defining himself as being always an alcoholic,
your
he
mind
is
is
trapping
a
himself in that
powerful
addiction.
thing. The mind is a
and you, in fact,
thing.
you present an addiction to being addicted right in that, in and of itself. So, I mean, it's self-defeating that. But ultimately, I was just calling him drug addict guy because that's what I saw of him. He, one way or another, any way you slice it, he's been presented as the dude who was a drug addict, and thereby that's his origin story. I was a drug addict, and like that's his biggest deal. That's what he has to say about his personal situation. So he's a fucking drug addict guy. I'm not saying he is a drug addict now, and I'm not discounting his recovery should he have gone through it to any extent. That's not. So no, it's not ad hominem. I'm actually supporting his view of him being a drug addict.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe you asked that as like
or just a way of bringing it up.
Yeah, could have been. I mean, could have been. I guess for other people that might have come across as a clever question. I guess. Anyways, so, halfway through his questioning, but to finish it off here, DarkFlame actually posted a video saying, speaking of morality, what do you think of this guy? And sent us a link to another video that we are going to attend to here as our first officially requested reality check for you. And we're gonna.
It's pretty long.
It's pretty long. We're gonna attend this one in parts because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to be. It affords us a great many opportunities, and there's just so many different layers to it. And ultimately, the best opportunity that it gives us is in the example that it allows for us to set about the channel in and of itself, and overall what we are in effect trying to accomplish here with it is that. There are so many layers, there are so many factors in play, and combinations of values, like generally the schematic of soul mechanics is regarding this concept of there being intrinsic or what you could call objective values in play, and that ultimately there's one soul. Everything's a part of it, and that is not just in the sense that the entire universe is within this soul. That's in the sense that all time, all space, all considerations, everything is one soul, and that we experience accessing parts of this soul by unlocking certain features of this soul by using the combinations of values. The combinations of values we have in our value set, or a deck as I like to call it, effectively acts as keys that unlock worlds for us, unlock experiences, and of course the experiences thereby put into play more values that unlock more parts of essentially exploring yourself. and unlocking yourself. You could say you're playing yourself like a game via this character you've created that is essentially a combination of values. Now, oh, that was you. So that's the idea. That soul mechanic, like I said before in one of my other videos, their soul mechanics is a thing unto itself that we're trying to present, and then the channel is titled Soul Mechanics hereby because what we're going to do with the channel here is use it as an interactive game of sorts to set that example, as an example of what we're trying to present, because it's all macrocosmic and microcosmic. It's going to be just infinitely reflecting, because ultimately it is eternity, which again comes back to the God thing. So it's eternal. It's never ending. It is without beginning or end. Anyways, the title of the video that we were asked to do a check for here is...
Are we doing this right now?
Sort of. Maybe.